So, good evening. Third year BA Computer Applications, Semester 6, PHP Programming. Third year BA Computer Applications, Semester 6, PHP Programming. So, today we discuss about PHP programs using two PPTs, using two PPTs, two different PPTs. So, PHP programming, as we know that PHP is a scripting language. It is used with HTML scripts. It is it is mainly used for developing websites, web applications, online applications, like that, internet based applications. So today's topics are background and history of PHP. So how PHP is evolved and history of PHP and installations and comments, how to use or give comments in PHP, what are variables, what are conditions, what are loops, what are functions, how to you handle files in PHP, and database handling like MySQL, ODBC connections, like that. So background. So what is PHP? PHP is nothing but, what is the definition of PHP? It is nothing but it is a personal home page maker. So C kind of scripts written in Perl language, and so the latest version of PHP is 5.2. Today we are using also 6 and 7 also. So installation. So how to install PHP? It is a scripting language. PHP is mainly, it is a scripting language. Apache server need to be installed first. So what is Apache server? It is a web server. Apache is a web server. So in the web server only we may place run all the web pages, HTML pages, or PHP pages, or PHP scripts. So Apache server is a web server mainly. So first of all you have to install Apache server, and in that some config file is there. In config file you have to change some settings like directories, installation setting, directories, like that, and you also have to set the root, document root paths where PHP files are to be stored. What is the folder used to store all the PHP files? In the there are many applications, very online applications or web applications. Each application have separate folders to be used. After that only you have to install PHP. All these Apache and PHP both are open source softwares. Apache servers and PHP both are open source softwares, means they are free to use, and there is no need to pay any cost, or there is no license required to buy. And these are open sources, and we directly download it from internet or from the vendors. And what is another important feature of open source softwares is we can modify their code. The code is also available to the users on the internet. So we can, and the users are also allowed to change the code also. So that is the main advantage of using this open source systems. So install PHP and Apache config directory, and these are some settings. Generally these PHP can be run on any type of operating systems like Windows, Unix, Linux, like that. So comments, how to give comments in PHP. So how to use or how to give comments in PHP. Generally all PHP files are saved. Generally PHP files have .php extension. So all PHP files are saved with an extension .php. And one more, and there is no special software or like Notepad or any editor required. You may simply type the PHP code or scripts in any notepad, save with some file name .php. And in PHP also the comments are generally written with some / like in C and C++, and multiple comments are written with /star, as we know that single line comments are used with double slash, and /star are used with multiple lines of comments. So this is the simple example of using PHP script. PHP is not a programming language, it is a scripting language. Generally scripting language means like HTML. So generally all the PHP scripts are embedded or inserted into HTML only. So all the PHP programs and PHP scripts are generally inserted or embedded into a HTML code. So the syntax of the PHP is simple: HTML body, after that less than $PHP echo hello /HTML. So generally we may write the above program will display hello in the. So all the PHP programs or all the PHP code or scripts are generally written in between less than $PHP, less than $PHP and greater than. So all the PHP code or scripts or programs generally written in less than $PHP and greater than PHP, and these scripts are generally written in within the body or within the body only, or we may write outside the body also. So next is variables. As we already discussed about this, all the variables in PHP, all the variables in PHP starts with a dollar symbol, and a variable may contain an underscore or numbers or alphabets, but it should start with a alphabet. Dollar should be followed by an underscore alphabet, not a number. Then so PHP is loosely typed language. What is PHP? Is a loosely typed language. There is no strict data typing. Strict data typing means we can store any data types, or we can store any type of data in any variable. That is called as loosely typed typing language. Variables can be assigned with any values. So we can assign the variables at the same time as we declare the variables in the program. So conditions are conditional statements are conditions in PHP. So as we already know that conditions, what are the different conditions, conditionals or conditional statements used in C, C++ like that. So generally the conditions or conditional statements are if else statement, switch statement. So if else statement syntax is if within code brackets some condition, if it is true then a set of statements or group of statements are executed. Else if or else or simply else if again condition 2 like that. Another statement, another conditional statement is switch statement. Switch, as we know that switch is also one of the conditional statement used in PHP like C and C++. So the syntax is switch within brackets some variable or expression or some value, bracket open, case condition value 1 : statement break like that. So this is same as C language. So these two are called as conditional statements. These are called as generally called as conditional statements. So what are the different conditional statements in C language? In PHP, if statement or a simple if statement, if else statement, if else if statement. Fourth one is switch statement. So loops or looping statements are also same, as we already know that in C language or C and C++. So what are the different types of loops in PHP? For loop, while loop and do while loop. For loop, while loop and do while loop. So what is a for loop? What is the syntax? For within as in C language, for within brackets initialization semicolon, condition semicolon, increment or decrement operators, and within the brackets some statements. So simple example is for I is equals to 1 semicolon, I is less than or equals to 10 semicolon, I plus plus. So another for loop, another looping statement is while loop. So what is the syntax of while loop? While within brackets condition, while within brackets some condition, brackets open, some statements. Another statement is do while statement, do while or do within brackets some statements while condition. So these three are called as conditional statements or loops or looping statements. So for loop, so in these looping statements or loops or looping statements, we may use some keyword called some word called index variable or condition variable or index variable or condition variable. So for example, simple example is while, or another example for while statement is while I is less than or equals to 10, some statements I plus plus. So here I is called as a while index or a index variable. I is called as an index variable. So functions and parameters, and another concept in PHP is functions. So as we know that C and C++ languages, as we know that the C and C++ languages, PHP also have a concept called functions. So basically functions are two types, system defined functions and user defined functions. So basically functions are two types, user defined functions for basically two types. First one is called as system defined functions or built-in functions. Second one is called as user defined functions. So there are many types of system defined functions or user system defined functions, like for example mathematical functions, string functions, character functions, like that, date functions, like that. And user defined functions, and user defined functions means our own functions, functions which are written by us or our own functions are called as user defined function. So what is basically, what is a function? Function is nothing but a set of statements or a group of statements which are continuously executed many times by the user. So generally functions contain some code or statements with a set of statements or a group of statements with continuous execution. And another important feature of functions is we may call them as many times as possible. As many times as possible means we can call them any number of times without any limitation, and we can create any number of functions also, user defined functions also. Why we require functions means to functions are mainly used to break a large program or break out a large program into a small pieces. Means whenever if you take a large application or a large program, it is very tedious to run and execute and debug. But if you convert them into a small number of functions, it is very easy to manage. It is very easy to it is faster in execution, like that. So PHP functions need to be defined with keyword function. So to define functions in PHP, you need to write function before that the word key function. So every function should starts with a function keyword. So every function should starts with a keyword called function in PHP. It can have 0 or more values parameters. So as we know that in C, C++, every function may or may not be, it may or may not be, have parameters or argument values. Means these parameters or argument values are optional to use. If you want, you may use it, otherwise you need not use them. And functions may or may not return values. Similarly, every function and every function used in PHP generally returns some functions returns some values to the main program. Similarly, some functions may not return any value. So some functions generally returns some values to the called program, and some functions may not return any value to the programs. Again, the functions in the while using the functions, we are using two terms: function calling calling a function and called function. There are two terms called. First one is calling a function, and second one is called function. Calling a function means to call a function. You can call any function any number of times. You can call many functions at a time. And called function means the defined function. Similarly, in the functions, the concept of functions, there are three parts while using functions. The first part is called as there are three parts or components of while using or processing functions. First one is called as declaring a function. Declaring a function is first part. Second part is called as function definition. Second part is called as function definition. Third part is called as declaration of function. So these are the three parts or three levels of functions. So while using functions in C or C++ in Java, there are three paths or ways of use. First one is declaring a function, and second one is first one is defining a function. Second one is function definition. Third one is declaring a function. Again, functions have some elements or parts. Again, every function have some elements or parts. Generally, every function have a unique function name. By using that function only, we can identify it. And every function may or may not have some return value, and every function have some may or may not have some functions, may or may not have some parameters or arguments. After that, local variables are used to define. Local variables are used. After that, return statement is used. Generally, local variables are, there are two types of variables: local variables and global variables. Local variables are used and available in that available in that function only, whereas global functions may be availed throughout the program or outside the function also. So they are called as global functions. Next is, there are two parts of while using functions, there are two components or parts. First one is function calling and called function, as we know that. Again, functions are four types. Functions are four types. First one is functions without any return value and without any parameters or arguments. Second one is functions with some arguments and no parameters and no arguments. Third one is functions with some values, return values, and no parameters and no arguments. And fourth type of functions are called as no return values and no parameters or no arguments. So these are the different types of functions used. So this is the simple example used in PHP, creating functions in PHP. So the code is like this: less than question mark PHP function say hi bracket open echo. What is echo? Echo is a standard output function like printf function in C language. Echo is a standard output function to display something on the screen and bracket close and question mark greater than. This can be called as so this is the simple syntax used to create a function in C language, PHP. So parameterized functions means, so next class we will discuss all these things. Parameterized functions means functions with some arguments or parameters. Functions with some arguments or parameters means, for example, if you pass some values or some to a function, then you may use some parameters or arguments. If more parameters or arguments used, you may separate it by comma, using by comma. So in the next class we may discuss the remaining things.